Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Monday, June the 27th. I'm Zach Ewing, and I promise this is not a solo show, at least not entirely a solo show, as in just a few minutes, I will be joined here on our bet.nola.com Sports Betting Monday show by Eric Biggio, who is the head of trading for Caesars baseball team. And he is going to go through a Major League Baseball midseason odds review with me. So that is coming up in about 5 minutes, and we're looking forward to that. A reminder, in the meantime, a couple of things to take care of. One is that we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook, and we hope that you can sign up for the Caesars Sportsbook if you want to get in on some of this Major League Baseball action, or if you are just waiting for football season like a lot of us are. You can sign up for Caesars Sportsbook at nola.com/Caesars, and your first bet is risk-free up to $1,500. So the way that works, you make your first bet. If it wins, great, you just made yourself some money. If you lose, you get another crack, another bite at that apple, and you can, up to $1,500, have a second chance and basically try to win all of that money all over again. So go to nola.com/Caesars for that. A couple of other things to take care of before Eric joins us here in a few minutes. It was a big weekend for sort of breakthrough championships. If you get our Bayou Bets newsletter in your inbox, which if you don't, sign up at bet.nola.com for that. You know that we were sort of tracking all of this, and one of them was the Stanley Cup final. It finished up last night. Colorado Avalanche beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 2-1 in Game 6. That finished the series 4-2. Always kind of weird when a team doesn't get to close it out at home. The Avs had a chance in Game 5 at home and lost, so they go fly across the country and finish it off. Their fans don't get to see it, but I'm sure they were all watching on TV and got to see them raise the Stanley Cup and skate it around the ice. Always one of my favorite things in sports. And so congrats to the Avs. They were among the preseason favorites in the NHL, by the way. You see there at the bottom, plus 550 preseason, very low odds to win the Stanley Cup, and so they do cash. Still a nice payday, obviously, if you bet on Colorado, but not quite as nice of a payday as it would be for those who had the gumption, had the guts, had the glory to bet on the Ole Miss baseball team. And I'm sure around here, college baseball is one of the king sports, and so everyone's aware that Ole Miss won its first national title yesterday. So one of LSU's rivals. But it's interesting, as you talk to LSU fans, it seems like a lot of them are genuinely happy for Ole Miss here. And I get that. Like, look, LSU has 5 national championships already. And yes, it's been too long since they've had one for most of the fan base, and they're definitely desperate to get back to that mountaintop. But this is Ole Miss first. They're your neighbor. They're coached by Mike Bianco, who is an LSU graduate. They just got hot at the right time. I mean, Ole Miss was the last at-large team in the NCAA regional field, and they get all the way to Omaha, and then they take care of business. They won Saturday night's game, and then they win Sunday afternoon with a comeback, 3 runs in the 8th inning, beat Oklahoma 4-2, win the series, and you see there at the bottom let's just say a $10 bet on Ole Miss pre-tournament paid tremendous odds, paid you $600 back at 60-1 odds. So Ole Miss, we've been telling you all season long, we've been telling you, don't bet on the favorites in college baseball, at least not before the end of the year. Tennessee was almost even money all year long. No sense in that. And so Ole Miss was the correct answer. 60-1, they get it done. And we'll ask Eric a little bit about that too when we get there. We will bring Eric Biggio, Caesars lead trader for baseball, on here in just a minute. One more housekeeping note I did want to mention, though, if you haven't already, Jim Derry's on vacation. That's why he's not here today. But log on to any major podcast platform, or you can find it on bet.nola.com. Check out Jim's Friday Datitude podcast. He and Jeff Duncan were able to get Saints GM Mickey Loomis on the podcast for like a 25, 30-minute conversation. Just really good stuff. You don't have very many opportunities to hear Mickey Loomis in a one-on-one or 2-on-1 setting, as it were, like that, where he can just talk about what he saw from the offseason, what he expects this season. And I can tell you, just from listening to it, Mickey Loomis is excited about this team. No Drew Brees, obviously, no Sean Payton. This is a new era for the New Orleans Saints. But as you can see from these odds, they just kind of keep ticking down. The smart money is on the Saints a little bit. That win total at the bottom there was 7.5 when the offseason started. Now it's not only gone up to 8, but you're paying minus 140 on the over 8. And so if you didn't get in on this, the NFC South, they were 5-1. Now they're plus 380. If you didn't get in on this, the boat may have passed, but the Saints are very excited about their season. Still waiting answers on Alvin Kamara, to a lesser extent on Michael Thomas if he'll play. But Mickey addresses a lot of that. So go to any major podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any of that, and check out Datitude on Friday. Jim took some time off. He took a day out of his middle of his vacation to record and produce that podcast. That's how special it is. So make sure you do that. And speaking of special, you are watching Bayou Bets for June the 27th, and this is our Major League Baseball midseason odds special. And with that said, we'd like to welcome on to the program Eric Biggio, the head of baseball trading, at Caesars. And here he is. Eric, how are you today? Oh, I'm not sure we can hear you, Eric. At least I can. We'll see if we can get the audio figured out there. Oh, doesn't say you're muted. Let me see. See if we can hear Eric here. He's on to talk about Major League Baseball odds. Eric, are you with us? We can see you, but we can't hear you. At least I can't. If someone can hear Eric, comment and let me know that I'm the only one who can't hear him, and that will narrow down what the problems are. Eric is going to log off and try to come back on. Maybe he can find a mic. But in the meantime, just to reiterate what I just said, listen, the Saints are excited about their offseason. Mickey Loomis is excited about their offseason. You can hear that on Datitude. This is a pretty good team. I mean, they had one of the best defenses in the NFL last year. And one of my favorite bets, by the way, that's not listed on this list is Saints odds in the division, win total, in the division is just 3. They just have to win 3 out of 6 games to get you a push. They have to win 4 to win that bet for you. But it's at even money. And if you think about it, Atlanta and Carolina, look, the Saints got to win at least 2 of those games. They probably could win 3. They'll be favored in all 4 of those games. If they could win 3 of those 4, that's a push right there. And then they've just got the split with Tampa Bay, a team that even since Tom Brady arrived, the Saints have really dominated that series. They've won 4 out of 5 against Tom Brady's Bucks, with the exception, of course, being the playoff game, the one everybody wanted. But during the regular season, they've won all 4. And they've just got to win 1 of those 2 plus 3 out of 4 against Atlanta and Carolina. Really like that bet on Caesars. You are watching Bayou Bets. We're awaiting Eric Biggio, head of Caesars Trading for Baseball. Couldn't get his mic to work. We couldn't hear him when he was on a minute ago. So we'll see if we can get Eric to rejoin. But in the meantime, let's take a look at some of those Major League odds as we go forward here. For the first time, one of the reasons I was glad we had Eric on today, for the first time this weekend, actually for the first time in several years during the regular season, the LA Dodgers are no longer the favorites to win the World Series. That honor now belongs to the New York Yankees. And let's see if we can't get Eric on. We'll try one more time. Eric, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you. That's fantastic.
Okay, great. So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. How are you today?
Doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing just great. We're talking baseball. It's summertime. I was just writing in our daily best bets. Like, this is sort of the start of the sports betting year, and it starts out with just a month of Major League Baseball, and you have some Wimbledon and some NASCAR and golf and things to bet on. But as we all await football, this is really the time when baseball betting kind of takes center stage.
We do. We finally got it all to ourselves now with the Stanley Cup wrapping up last night. So the focus will be all on baseball going forward.
Well, it's just showing some World Series odds, and I do want to ask you about the College World Series as well. But let's take a look at these World Series odds. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, you would know better than me. When was the last time in the regular season the Dodgers were not the World Series favorite? I think it's been years.
I just made a note of that this week with the injury to Mookie Betts and some injuries to their bullpen with Daniel Hudson going down, and with the Yankees' torrid pace that has propelled the Yankees to the favorite now. So it's been, I'd say, the Dodgers were favorite all through last year until the Braves beat them, and probably towards the end of 2019, I would say.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I know the Giants had a good team last year, but the Dodgers were still the World Series favorites the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, people see the Yankees record and they've won 53 games. I think they're 53-20 as of right now. Just an incredible winning percentage, on pace to challenge the record of 116 regular season wins.
Yeah.
But the way baseball's structured anymore, it doesn't really matter if they win 115 and the Dodgers only win 100. Once you get to the postseason, it's all wiped clear, of course, and the Dodgers still have the starting rotation. They'll get healthier. Yeah. Are you taking money on the Yankees? I mean, is that one reason for the odds move as well?
Yeah, it's a two-pronged kind of move. Performance and money has prompted the move to making the Yankees favorite. But like you mentioned, once playoffs start, and with the expanded playoffs this year, it might make it a little more random. The thing that's going to be an interesting factor is the buys, right? Coming into this year, we'll have the expanded wild cards, but the two best records will have a bye. So I think that'll be a huge factor, looking like the Yankees and the Astros, and could be the Dodgers and Mets in the National League, but still up for grabs.
Yeah, let's take a minute and talk about that, because the playoff structure is so new. It's now 6 teams from each league that get into the playoffs. Previously, for the last 10 years or so, it's been 5. Now it's 6, and so the top 2 teams get a bye into what is still the divisional round, while teams 3 through 6 in each league, they've got to play this best of 3 series that, I mean, as we know in baseball, like a best of 3 series. I mean, I think the Orioles took 2 out of 3 from the Rays last week, and I'm sure you could find an example every single weekend. You look and say, well, that team's not as good as this other team, but they took 2 out of 3. Right. And so it adds this level. If you're not one of those top 2 teams, you've got to win, maybe not quite a coin flip, but something close to that just to get through.
Oh, absolutely. And, momentum just as good as your next day's starting pitcher, right? So you have a standout starter, let's say McClanahan on the Rays, who just could shut down any offense. That could overcome any kind of advantage or season-long advantage that a team might have. So, it's going to be a real battle, I think, to see who finishes second as opposed to third. I think that's going to be a real battle, and also for the 6th wild card, the last team to get in. That'll be fun. That'll be a new element this year.
Yeah, absolutely. On a similar topic, Eric.
Yeah.
For those who are new betting baseball, since it is that time of year, are futures more popular in baseball than they are in other sports? It just seems to me, with so many games, that maybe people are afraid to bet an individual Friday night game, but they're willing to say, I think that team wins the AL West.
That's a good question. And I think just by the volume of games, like it does come in, because especially something like the home run chase, where the home run leader, where you have games every day, and just human impulse. Somebody sees an Aaron Judge home run. Oh, I've got to bet him to be the home run leader, or their favorite guy, Pete Alonso hits a couple home runs, they run to bet him. Whereas football, it's every week, right? So you get that weekly action on Saturday, maybe Monday after the games are done, but then there's kind of a pause until the games start up again. Whereas baseball, it's that daily grind. You get it. It's a 162 game season all during the summer. So yeah, the futures market, I think, is a little more popular than the other sports.
Yeah, I mean, the viewers of this show know, and of other shows, of course, in football, we'll talk about a line all week and talk about how it moves and how different injuries or injury reports may have an effect on it. In baseball, there's no time for all of that. I mean, it's just, you've got a matter of hours instead of a matter of days, and then there's another game. And so advice for single game bettors. And I know there's all sorts of options. You can bet on a 3-inning line or a 5-inning line or a 7-inning line if you want to take out the randomness of a bullpen. And then the other thing people ought to know is there really is no such thing as a big favorite. I think the Yankees are minus 300 against Oakland tonight, which is about as big of a line as you'll see in baseball, just because the games are sort of random and the favorite does not always win. And so sometimes it's worth taking a shot on that underdog.
Well, absolutely. Even the worst teams in the league still win 60 times a year, right? Approximately. So, as you said, you have to factor that in. And as you mentioned, the first 5 innings, a great handicap for your new bettors, where if you're a former coworker of mine would get so frustrated with the bullpens, and he kept losing his bets in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. He said, you know what, I'm just going to, and this was when it just first started, the first 5-inning wagers. He goes, that's it. That's all I'm going to bet from now on. I want to bet purely on the starting pitchers. And that's a great angle. If you're a handicapper and you want to focus your baseball handicap just on the starting pitchers, that's a great way to do it, where it kind of takes the bullpen out of the equation.
Just a reminder to new users, you can sign up for the Caesars Sportsbook app at NOLA.com/Caesars. $1,500 risk-free bet on your first bet for new users. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars to sign up. Let's dig into some futures, Eric. This is our MLB midseason odds report on bet.nola.com. And I'm excited to get your thoughts on some of this. We talked to you about the very top of the board with the Yankees passing the Dodgers just by 20 cents there. As the World Series favorite. How about those next two teams on the board? Because they've sort of separated themselves too. You mentioned those 4 teams as possibly getting the 4 byes through the first round. But beyond that, just from a team strength point of view, those look like the 4 that you start with.
Yeah, and the Dodgers lineup, even through all the injuries they've had, is just so deep. And, they've got guys like Gonsolin and Tyler Anderson step up kind of to really help up their rotation. The Astros, we've got some pretty strong liability there. Took a pretty strong bet on the Astros to win the World Series. So, with reason too. They're just playing great. That Alvarez is a stud in the lineup. The lineup is so deep, and they're going to get McCullers back too. Likewise with the Mets, their rotation's only getting better with DeGrom and Scherzer coming back shortly. So those 4 teams, as you mentioned, have kind of separated themselves from the pack. There's still a lot of baseball left to play. We haven't reached the All-Star game yet, so it wouldn't surprise me if one of those teams on the bottom part of their slide there, the Braves or the Blue Jays especially, or even somebody like the Red Sox who've been red hot, kind of make a strong move.
Yeah, and we'll look at page 2 here, and you see the Red Sox in the third line down there at 35-1 still. Is there a team on this list or the bottom of the previous one, maybe, Eric, where Caesars does have a little liability? You are starting to see some money come in, even though they aren't looking like a World Series contender at the moment.
We were taking some solid money on the Phillies prior to the Harper injury, and unfortunately, that's just going to have a big effect. That team, they're built kind of like a softball team, right? With Schwarber and Castellanos and Harper, and these guys could just hit home runs for days. And they still have some pitching, right? With Nolan and Wheeler, so they were attracting some money, public and some sharp money on top of that. But with that Harper injury really kind of deflates things. The Red Sox, as mentioned, though, that's a team especially they've got a big series coming up with Toronto coming up right now. If they show well there, I wouldn't be surprised if their odds continue to drop.
Did the Bryce Harper, by the way, broke his thumb, I believe it was, hit by a pitch over the weekend. He's going to miss a significant chunk of time, maybe most of the rest of the regular season. How did that shift your odds on the Phillies? They're 40-1 now. What were they pre-Harper?
I believe they got down to 30-1,
Okay.
So about 10 points higher. And then individually with Harper as well, he'd gotten down to about as low as 5-1 for the MVP, and now he's drifted above 20-1. Just unfortunate because he was really gutting it out, playing through injury and carrying the team. So a big effect on all prices there. Yeah,
and we'll get to some MVP odds here in a few minutes. At the bottom of the page there, the Baltimore Orioles are 1,500-1. And the reason I bring them up is because I believe I saw this morning that a Caesars property in Maryland took a fairly large bet on them at 2,000-1 to win the World Series. Not often you see someone lay significant money on odds that long. And of course, it did have an effect. They go from 2,000-1 to 1,500-1, still very long. But tell us about how the book will react to a bet like that.
Oh, we would have to just even though it might look like a long shot, it's the liability on those long odds builds up quickly, right? So every $20 bet, even at 100-1, 200-1, it builds up quick a lot quicker than the Yankees at 4-1. And I'd seen you mention before Ole Miss. We took, we lost a decent chunk on the World Series there because we had them at 100-1 earlier in the year when they're off to a slower start. So we have to react quickly on those kind of long odds.
Yeah, and congrats to those Ole Miss bettors. And I just looked it up. It was at the Horseshoe in Baltimore, a $200 bet on the Orioles at 2,000-1. So it'll pay $400,000 if it. Now, I mean, look, they're still like 7 games out of the playoff chase. They're playing better than people thought they would. There's still a long way to go just to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
But that's the fun of betting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Rams, I think my first year in the industry, the St. Louis Rams at the time were a similar price, 200-1, something along those lines. And people put in speculative bets, $500, and we paid some big tickets on those. So, those are the tickets that make gambling great. Leicester City, EPL a few years back, same kind of thing, 1,001, 2,001. So it could always happen. You can never say never in this business.
Yeah, I mean, people laugh at some of these bets, but they cash sometimes. So
yeah.
Break it down and look at each league individually. Obviously, not a whole lot of difference in the order here from the World Series odds. Yankees 2-1, Astros little higher than 2.5-1, and then it's the Blue Jays at 5-1. A pretty significant gap there between Toronto and anybody else. And we've seen that all year long. Toronto, even though they got off to somewhat of a slow start, they get a lot of respect.
Yeah, and they were, I believe, the preseason favorite for the AL East, or if not tied with the Yankees. So there was a lot of kind of public love for the team. But going into the year, they've got some real likable guys with Vlad Jr. and Bichette and these guys. So we have a lot of built-in liability for the Blue Jays. So I think we're kind of waiting for them to make their run. The pitching is there. I think Gausman and Alek Manoah, those guys have shown well. A little bit of disappointment with Barrios, their third guy. So, but I'm still waiting for them to make a run. So I wouldn't be surprised if they not really give the Yankees a battle for the AL East, but make a strong move to be at least the second best team in the division.
And the team that they will fight potentially in the playoffs is the Houston Astros, which is the hometown team for a lot of people in Louisiana, especially now that Alex Bregman, LSU great, is one of their stars and one of their veterans. The Astros, I mean, boy, the team does not look the same as it did a couple of years ago. And I know you mentioned they're getting McCullers back. They're getting some of their pitching back. And they had the sign stealing scandal, all of that. Turns out this organization, this franchise was built pretty strongly because even as they move guys in and out, every time they bring up a new player, Yordan Alvarez a couple of years ago is now an MVP candidate. Jeremy Pena this year, not a lot of people had heard of him. He's a Rookie of the Year candidate. The Astros just keep chugging along.
Yeah, and the analytics department, I think there's a lot of credit within that organization. They keep, like you said, pulling up guys within the organization. That's the strength of a strong organization where you can just kind of promote from within and just plug in guys and say, okay, well, we value your contribution, Carlos Correa, but we've got a guy ready to take your shoes and without missing a beat. And to me, I think this lineup is even stronger than years past. It's just not a lot of holes from top to bottom. And the pitching is, Verlander's the one key that I thought has made a big effect this year. I didn't think he'd come back as strong as he has. And he is, if not the odds on, he's one of the co-favorites for the Cy Young.
And again, we'll get to those awards here in just a few minutes. Looking at the National League, Dodgers still the favorite here. The Mets have a slightly better record at this point. And then another team that's a lot of people around here cheer for is the Atlanta Braves, defending champions. Started out slow, but they've gotten hot, and now they're starting to challenge the Mets. What do you see about the Braves' long-term prospects?
Yeah, you have to respect them. Any World Series champ. I thought there'd be some questions replacing Freeman. Olsen really hasn't stepped up, but they're so deep. Acuna really hasn't been healthy all year, but now they've got guys like Michael Harris and Steven Strider rookies that have made solid contributions, and now they're kind of playing to the level people expected. So the NL East, I think, is going to be a dogfight going for the rest of the year. The Mets are, about a $2 favorite, but I think that there it is. I think that, with reason, it's going to be a 2-horse race going down to the wire.
Yeah, and that's a nice segue into our division odds here. A couple of divisions that have all but been decided. We talked about how hot the Yankees are. A little bit of respect in that price for the quality of the Blue Jays. And then the AL West, the Astros, almost certainly going to win that division. But elsewhere, we've got some good races. And Eric, I look at the NL West where, yes, the Dodgers are, plus 200 favorites to win the NL, but they're only minus 220 to win their own division because the Padres are a team that's having a great year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Machado, had kind of put the team on his shoulders to start the year, Manny Machado, and guys like Mackenzie Gore, rookies, really stepped up. Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove, another NL Cy Young Award candidate favorite. They are absolutely in the mix. And, while the Dodgers have just, with their depth, have kind of motored on, any more, let's say Freddie Freeman goes down for a little bit, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see San Diego kind of take the lead in that division.
We'll get into some of the awards here as we continue on our Bayou Bets Major League Baseball midseason odds review. Speaking with Eric Biggio, Director of Baseball Trading at Caesars. Happy he's here with us. And Eric, one question for you. With the volume of baseball, what is your day like? How do y'all handicap the odds, and what sort of team do you have to scour box scores and say, hey, Jeremy Pena hit 2 home runs last night. We need to adjust these Rookie of the Year odds. Is it just looking at the way the money flows and letting that tell the story, or are you scouring those box scores every morning to see if you missed something?
It's both. It's everything. It's we have guys on duty that are constantly, watching all the games, keeping track of Twitter, any type of injuries, we have so many markets up right now, which is a lot of fun. Like I said, the home run leader, we keep the regular season win totals up and running all year. So it's something we just have to stay on top of. So I have guys in the morning that are on Twitter. Hey, this guy's been called up. This guy's might be injured, might be out for the day. And as the games are going on during the day, making live adjustments to our future prices. So one of the markets we have available is who will be the home run leader, Aaron Judge versus the field. So it's an interesting one where Aaron Judge has got the lead for home runs, but anytime Yordan Alvarez or Pete Alonso has a multi-home run game, we've got to make some adjustments there. Likewise, if Judge hits a home run, we have to adjust that price as well. So we have to do a lot on the fly, and then the day-to-day where we're just booking the games and making the prices for the next day. That's kind of a routine as well, where we get together, come up with the prices, and then put them up for wagering.
It's got to be a great Slack channel to be a part of, the Caesars baseball, just adjusting everything on the fly. And there's 10 games going on at the same time, and Lord knows what could happen. You mentioned the home run leader odds. I think Aaron Judge is minus 120 to lead baseball in home runs. He's almost the same odds as he is the MVP in the AL at minus 115. Such a tremendous start. He's on pace, I think, for 62 home runs right now. The only thing that could stop him maybe from winning the MVP now, of course, an injury changes everything. We'll talk about that in the NL race. But also Shohei Ohtani is such a unicorn that the guy goes and hits 2 home runs one night and strikes out 13 the next night. And you have to take money on him after something like that happens, don't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the AL MVP, and unlike anything for years, it's just so many diverse opinions and strong opinions on either candidate, right? Where I see guys who are in the Judge camp, you have to vote for Judge. Look at the numbers he's putting up. Look at the Yankees record. He's carrying them. Oh, you look at Ohtani. He's a unicorn, as you mentioned. And who else can pitch and hit like this? And he hits 470-foot bombs, and the next day he strikes out 13. So how do you value that in something like the AL MVP market? It's a really kind of philosophical debate as far as on top of the baseball debate. So it's a real fun one to handicap and book as well. So whenever one guy does well, I'll see the bet ticker light up. Like just as soon as Judge hit the 3-run homer yesterday, a ton of Judge bets came through for the MVP. Likewise, when Ohtani's going great guns, when he's striking out a ton of guys, I see bets come in for Ohtani, not only for the MVP, but for the Cy Young, where he's got a listed for the Cy Young. So it's a fun one to book.
You also, and we talked about this, our team talked about this last week with the NBA Finals MVP. Part of it is also handicapping the way people will vote and the human nature involved in that. In the NBA Finals, the discussion was, well, if Curry is even close, he's never won a Finals MVP before. There's going to be a sentimental momentum to get him that MVP. Shohei Ohtani, I feel like, got that a little bit last year. But also one thing that's changed is listen, the Angels are 5 games under 500. They're not a good team. They lost 14 in a row, but that doesn't seem to matter to voters as much as it did even 10, 15 years ago. Now you can win the MVP on a losing team.
Yeah, absolutely right. And a good thing is mentioned is kind of voter fatigue. Will there be voter fatigue with Ohtani in this case? We'll say, well, we gave it to him last year. Look at the years Judge having, we can't give it to him back to back. And there's other camps saying, well, anytime Ohtani's having a year like this, he has to be the MVP. He has to be the best player. Who else can do such a thing? The one thing to me that if I was a voter, like you said, it's humans voting on this. It's not robots, right? It's not just purely numbers. Ohtani and Trout kind of laid an egg in the Bronx when they were there. Ohtani got roughed up a little bit. So I think that might factor into some of the voters' minds, not only nationwide, but especially some of the Northeast voters might kind of look at that and say, well, on the big stage, he didn't produce. So we'll see. We'll see how it comes to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. A fun one to follow. In the National League, Paul Goldschmidt has become almost an odds-on favorite, plus 125. We talked about injuries to Mookie Betts there on the bottom line. Also, Manny Machado's been out more than a week now, as you mentioned, after carrying the Padres for the first couple of months. How does that affect his odds? It's a week. It's not supposed to be a long-term injury, but obviously he's missing a chance to, A, win games, and B, sort of add to his counting stats, his home runs and his RBIs.
Yeah, the NL is a tricky one, right? It's, even just a week ago, 4 of the top 7 guys were banged up. It was, Machado, Betts, Harper, and even Acuna on the Braves. So it's a really tricky one to not only handicap, their current production, but how much time are they going to miss? So the one kind of thoroughbred who's muscled through everything has been Goldschmidt, and he's been a real interesting one where I thought his peak years were with the Diamondbacks, and he might have been on the decline going to St. Louis. I couldn't have been further from the truth. I couldn't have been more wrong on that one. He's been amazing. So if he continues to do what he's doing, he'll be the winner.
Moving on to the Cy Young races, Eric. Actually, let's do Rookie of the Year first. I had these backward. Sure. We'll do Rookie of the Year. O'Neal Cruz only came up for the Pirates a couple of weeks ago. It just speaks to how wide open this race is. Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs, I believe, was the preseason favorite, and a month in, he was a pretty heavy favorite. But then he started to peter off. Then he's been out for a month. Nolan Gorman of the Cardinals came on. Mackenzie Gore of the Padres came on. But you mentioned Harrison Strider for the Braves, and then O'Neal Cruz, all guys who haven't been up all year, who are taking advantage of that void.
Yeah, and it's been NL Rookie of the Year is wide open. It's a challenging one to book. It's Cruz opened the favorite. He was the top of our odds start before the year. I believe he was similar price, and we were just questioning. I keep asking our baseball traders, when are they going to ever call him up? And people just throw their hands up. Who knows what the Pirates are doing? And then finally they call him up, and he's produced, and he's shown why he's a legitimate favorite. The guy's a stud, 6'7" shortstop who throws 97-hour bullets from short, and he can hit rockets off the bat. So he's really impressive to watch. And as you mentioned, Suzuki came out like a house of fire and went to $1.50 favorite, I think, at one point during the year. And he's drifted with injury. He hasn't really produced as of late. So it'll be wide open going forward.
And the interesting one there, too, is Cruz obviously would not win this if the vote was taken today. He just hasn't been up long enough. I mean, he's only got 2 home runs. I mean, he's just can't compare statistically. But you're trying to judge the momentum for the rest of the season here. You're not looking at today. You're looking at, okay, well, over the next 4 months, will he produce as much as these other guys have produced in 6 months?
1,000%, Zach. And I think if you voted for first half of the year, you'd have to give it to Mackenzie Gore, who's just been phenomenal. But you're also projecting the rest of the year, right? So then you're looking at somebody like Michael Harris, who's just called up recently as well, but he's hitting over 300, and it looks like the Braves have no plans to remove him from the lineup, right? So you have to look at projected at bats and performance as well. So your top 3 guys, I think, are you're going to be your candidates going forward.
Moving on to the AL there at the bottom half of your screen, a guy we've mentioned a couple of times, Jeremy Pena, kind of came out of nowhere. He was a little bit of a long shot. Spent some time as the favorite in this race. He has been hurt for the last week and a half, and so that's allowed the 2 guys everybody knew going into the year. Julio Rodriguez of the Mariners is now your odds-on favorite. Also, Bobby Witt Jr., his odds have shortened as he's gotten hot over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and in this one has been a kind of a 2-horse race for a while with the top 2 guys. Witt just recently, as you mentioned, has been playing better. He was the initial favorite, but there was a lot of publicity for Julio Rodriguez, even in spring training, saying how special and how much of a standout product this guy is. So he's, in May and June, he's really shown what kind of a talent he is. So if he stays healthy, it's his award to lose.
So Julio, the favorite there. And then we'll finish with the Cy Youngs. And I mean, Eric, this is such a Tampa Bay Rays thing, but I feel like if you polled even baseball fans who paid attention in March, or maybe even at the end of April, I'm not sure they would know who Shane McClanahan was. Right. And now he's the favorite to win the AL Cy Young.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm the lead baseball trader, right? And I didn't factor him in at all as a potential Cy Young Award winner. But pretty quickly it found out the biggest hint, Zach, is when the bettors and your sharp bettors are betting a guy not only in awards but on the day-to-day basis. So right off the bat, McClanahan, let's say we put him up as $1.30 favorite, and they would lay it to $1.40, $1.50. So that to me was a signal that wow, the bettors have confidence in this guy. We better pay attention as well.
Yeah. I mean, he has been phenomenal, as has Justin Verlander. Obviously, you mentioned him, and then Alek Manoah of the Blue Jays, a rookie last year, had a real strong year and has just kept going.
Yeah, and he's kind of carried the team, right? Where Barrios has drifted a little bit. It's been Manoah and Gausman who've done the trick for the Blue Jays, and Garrett Cole's a real interesting one, where he was a preseason favorite, had some kind of rough starts right off the bat, and guys like Nestor Cortez and Jordan Montgomery were doing their thing for the Yanks. But now, as of late, Garrett Cole's been the Garrett Cole of old. He's been really tough last few starts, and I think he looks like he's back on his A game.
In the National League, I felt like going into the season, this was maybe the most wide open awards market. I mean, Corbin Burns of Milwaukee won it last year. Shout out Bakersfield, California. But, he did. I mean, look, he didn't throw a lot of innings for a Cy Young Award winner. It was going to be hard for him to repeat that. Brandon Woodruff was the same thing for the Brewers, and he's had an injury, so he's kind of off. Walker Buehler's been hurt. It's been a little bit difficult to handicap going through the season. But Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins, another name maybe not a ton of people know, probably more than McClanahan, but he's taken the bull by the horns.
Yeah, and he's a workhorse. If you watch him pitch, 7 innings every time. He's kind of a throwback, one of these guys where the manager Mattingly gives him the ball and says, okay, I'll have somebody ready for you in the 8th inning. That's about it. He just goes out, throws strikes, and it's impressive to watch him pitch. He doesn't look like he's not a high effort guy. He looks like he's pretty easy velocity. So he's tough. He's always around. He's just got great command. So he's fun to watch pitch. just because of that. He's a treat to watch. Musgrove for the Padres, again, electric stuff. Once he, and you look at this list, and I think of the Pirates that had both Garrett Cole and Musgrove and some of the relievers on the Yanks. Boy, I mean, what a staff they could have had. But anyways, and further down the list there, Max Fried and Wheeler, some live arms in the NL. It's Alcantara. If he keeps going away, he's going to be tough to beat.
All right, just a couple more for you, Eric, before we let you go. First of all, College World Series. You had mentioned you were in charge of the handicapping for that through the regionals, super regionals, through Omaha. How do you do that when you're not necessarily watching it with the same level of care and interest as you do the major leagues? You have some markets that I would imagine college baseball is almost non-existent. You have other markets like Louisiana where a lot of people bet on it, and so. The question is, how do you go into an NCAA regional and say this is how we'll handicap Southern Miss versus Kennesaw State?
Right.
Where do you start?
It's a good question. And full disclosure, I love watching college baseball, but I'm not as familiar with it. I spend more of my time handicapping the majors. But thankfully, I've got a couple guys on my team. One, especially Robert Salazar, who's a college baseball specialist. He knows the players, he knows the teams. So I rely on him supremely for College World Series, for the regionals, and we've been booking it once conference play was started. So it was something where he was just on it. He was managing the futures, and he would just give me updates on how we stood and which are the teams to watch out for going forward, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's a ton of fun, and it's one of those sports, even more so than professional baseball, where, I mean, underdogs win that thing all the time. I mean, you really got to be on your toes.
Yep. No, and once it got down to the College World Series future pool, I think we had Texas first, Stanford, Notre Dame were kind of the first three favorites. And
I think Ole Miss was 10-1. I mean,
right,
they had
exactly, one of the longer shots out there. And he said it. He goes, honestly, if I could, I would make every team 7 or 8 to 1, and have at it, kind of thing. Because he goes, Texas has the best pitcher, but they're not the deepest staff. So it's really it's up for anybody. Yeah,
just a tremendously fun thing, but very difficult to predict. Speaking of which, I want you to take, just for our last question, take your trader hat off for a minute, put on your better hat. What is the long shot or futures bet you like the most for the second half of the baseball season, whether it's a World Series, a division, a win total, an award winner? What do you look at and say, man, that I could get behind that?
I've seen some bets come across the bet ticker this morning, and if I were to tail a few bets, it'd be the Red Sox. Maybe Red Sox for the pennant, something along those lines. I like something around those 30 to 40 to 1 prices. So that's right in my range. I think they're 25 to 1 for the to win the American League. So
I think this morning it was 17 to 1. So maybe moving,
taking some money. Yeah. So that one I think is pretty live, and who knows where Chris Sale is going to come back, but if he comes back anywhere close to the guy he's been in the past, they could be really live. And that lineup is with Devers and Story, Bogarts. They've got some bats, and as you mentioned, in a 3-game series, anything can happen. So I think there'd be a live team going forward.
All right, you heard it here first. If you haven't signed up for Caesars Sportsbook, NOLA.com/Caesars, you can use that free bet on the Red Sox, like Eric Biggio would advise. So, or on any of these other just tremendous markets out there. As he said, you could bet on win totals after every single day. If you think, this team's on a 10-game winning streak, they're garbage, I'm going to bet the under, or vice versa. The Angels lose 14 in a row, they'll be okay. Let's bet the over. So very interesting. And Eric, we thank you so much, the head of baseball trading at Caesars Sportsbook. Can't thank you enough for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
All right. Thank you, Eric. And we're very happy he could join us for this midseason odds report. And that will about do it for Bayou Bets on this Monday. Jim Derry and Devin Jackson are on vacation, as is Spencer the Guru Urquhart. Patrick McGee's out sick. I mean, everybody left me, except I had Eric Biggio here, so everything was okay. Little housekeeping note before we go. We will be dark for 4th of July weekend. No At the Book on Thursday, and no Bayou Bets next Monday, which is July 4th. So we will be back with you on Thursday, July the 7th for At the Book at 4 o'clock. live on these same social media channels and on bet.nola.com. Jim will be back. Spencer will be back. Devin will be back. I'll be there. Maybe I'll just let those guys handle it. I've talked enough. And until then, we certainly appreciate you all joining us and watching our Major League Baseball midseason odds report. Until next time, thanks for being here.